My name is Barbara, and I'm the eldest of two daughters. From as far back as I can remember, I've always been the serious and independent one. My younger sister, Michelle, was my polar opposite. Our house was always lively, filled with Michelle's laughter, Mom and Dad doting on her, and the constant buzz of pop songs playing in the background. Meanwhile, I sought out quiet corners, often with my nose buried in a book or focused on my homework. Birthdays and holidays always highlighted our differences. Michelle would tear through her gifts, squealing over trendy clothes or the latest gadgets. I, on the other hand, carefully set aside any money I received. "What are you saving for this time, Barbara?" Dad would ask, a hint of pride in his voice, though his eyes betrayed his confusion. "A laptop for studying," I'd reply. "The library computers are always busy." He would nod, but I could tell he didn't understand why I wasn't like other girls my age. Michelle, however, was a whirlwind of new styles and endless demands. "Mom, did you see the new iPhone? Everyone at school has one. I need it," she'd declare, and just like that, she'd get it, no questions, no saving. I remember the day I finally bought my laptop after months of saving and researching the best model. Bursting with pride, I brought it home and announced at dinner, "Look, I finally got it." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, glancing up briefly before turning her attention back to Michelle. "Oh, Michelle, tell us about your day at the mall." Just like that, the spotlight shifted, and my achievement faded into the background. It wasn't that they didn't love me, I knew they did in their own way, but Michelle was the sun in our family's solar system, and I was a distant planet, quietly orbiting on my own path. As we grew older, the gap between us widened. Michelle experimented with wild hairstyles and chased the latest fashion trends, while I stuck to my practical ponytail and comfy jeans. The library became my sanctuary, a quiet refuge where I could focus on my goals. When it came time for college, I poured every ounce of energy into applications. Late nights were spent perfecting essays, researching scholarships, and studying for exams. The day my acceptance letter arrived, complete with a full scholarship, was one of the happiest moments of my life. I ran into the kitchen, waving the letter. "Mom, Dad, I got in, with a full scholarship." Mom glanced up briefly while helping Michelle with her makeup. "That's nice, dear." "Michelle, hold still, I'm trying to get your eyeliner just right." "Good job, Barbara," Dad said from behind his newspaper. We expected nothing less. Their lack of enthusiasm stung, but I was used to it. Back in my room, clutching the letter, I resolved to prove myself. This was my chance to step out of Michelle's shadow. Meanwhile, Michelle barely scraped through high school. When she brought home a poor report card, I thought our parents might finally express some disappointment. Instead, they rallied around her. "Oh, sweetie, don't worry," Mom said, stroking her hair. "College isn't for everyone. You have so many other talents." "That's right, princess," Dad agreed. "You'll figure out your path." I couldn't believe it. "Are you serious?" She barely passed. "Barbara, don't be mean," Mom shot back sharply. "Your sister has other gifts." I bit my tongue and walked away. No matter what I achieved, Michelle would always be their favorite. College was a fresh start. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who valued hard work and ambition. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of this opportunity. Years flew by, while Michelle flitted from one beauty course to another without completing any. I graduated with honors and landed a job at a top company. Moving into my own apartment felt bittersweet. As I unpacked my belongings, I reflected on how different my life had become. Michelle still lived at home, pampered by our parents, while I stood on my own, ready to take on the world. The first few months at my job were intense, but my dedication paid off. Within a year, I was promoted to team leader. Excitedly, I called home to share the news. Mom answered, "Oh, that's nice, Barbara, but guess what? Michelle met the most wonderful boy. He comes from such a good family. We're all so thrilled." She launched into a long story about Michelle's new boyfriend, and my promotion was quickly forgotten. Hanging up, I felt deflated but more determined than ever. If my family couldn't value my achievements, I'd achieve even more. I worked tirelessly, seizing every opportunity to excel. My hard work paid off, and I climbed the ranks quickly, eventually becoming the youngest department head in the company's history. One day, the company owner, Mr. Paul, called me into his office. "Barbara, your work has been outstanding. We've never had someone rise through the ranks so quickly," he said, smiling. "Thank you, sir. I love what I do," I replied, beaming with pride. "It shows." he said. That's why I want to offer you something special, a chance to purchase an apartment at a significant discount through our top employee program. You've earned it. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and planning. When I finally held the keys to my new apartment, I felt like I was floating. I decided to host a housewarming party to celebrate with the people who mattered most. With little furniture to my name, I bought inexpensive plastic tables and chairs, arranging them thoughtfully. Even the disposable tableware matched the decor. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and I was proud. On the day of the party, my colleagues arrived first, bearing thoughtful gifts and warm congratulations. Then my family arrived, Mom, Dad, and Michelle, sweeping in like a whirlwind. Michelle's eyes darted around the room, and I caught the faint smirk she tried to suppress as she took in my modest furnishings. As the evening progressed, a pattern emerged. Whenever one of my colleagues congratulated me or praised my accomplishments, my parents would quickly redirect the conversation to Michelle. "Oh, that reminds me," Mom interrupted one of my coworkers mid-sentence. "Did Barbara tell you about Michelle's latest modeling gig? She's just so photogenic." "She was born for the spotlight," Dad chimed in. "Such natural talent." I noticed the confused, slightly uncomfortable looks on my colleagues' faces as the focus shifted, again, from me to Michelle. I wanted to disappear. Michelle, however, basked in the attention. "Oh, Mom, stop it," she giggled, clearly enjoying every second. When my family finally left, I shut the door with a mix of relief and frustration. My coworker Laura turned to me, wide-eyed. "Barbara, what the hell was that?" she asked, her voice low with concern. I shrugged, trying to brush it off. "Oh, that's just how they are." David, another colleague, shook his head. "No, Barbara, that's not normal. Are you okay? Do you need help?" A lump formed in my throat. Their concern was touching, but also mortifying. "Guys, really, it's fine, I'm used to it," I said, forcing a smile. "Who wants another drink?" As I busied myself in the kitchen, I could hear them whispering, their worry evident. I blinked back tears, refusing to let anyone see how much my family's behavior had hurt me. After that disastrous housewarming, I buried myself in work, determined to move forward. Months passed, and slowly, I turned my apartment into a home, a place I could truly be proud of. Every piece of furniture and splash of color was a testament to my independence and hard work. One sunny Monday, I decided to treat myself to something I'd been saving for, a car. It wasn't flashy, just a reliable sedan, but it was mine, bought with my own money. Driving it home, a wave of pride washed over me. This car was a symbol of everything I'd accomplished. I hadn't planned to tell my family, but news spread fast. That evening, Michelle called, her voice cheerful as always. "Barbara, I heard you bought a car." "That's nice," she said, her tone dripping with insincerity. "But you're really doing things the hard way, all this working and saving. It's so unnecessary." Her words made my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well," she said, as if explaining something obvious, "a woman's main job is to marry well. Find a man who will take care of you and give you everything you need. Why work yourself to death when you could have it all handed to you?" I was speechless. Was she serious? "Michelle, that's not how I see things," I finally said. "I want to earn what I have. I'm proud of what I've accomplished." She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Barbara, always the difficult one. Well, you'll see. I'll show you how it's done." Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at the phone, a mix of anger and disbelief churning inside me. How could we see life so differently? A few months later, Michelle called again, her voice brimming with excitement. "Barbara, guess what? I'm getting married. His name is Nicholas, and he's absolutely loaded. His parents are paying for everything. The wedding is going to be stunning." She launched into a detailed description of the dresses, flowers, and guest list, but all I felt was an emptiness inside. This was what she had been working toward, her idea of success. The wedding day came faster than I expected. I stood in a grand hall, surrounded by glittering guests, feeling out of place. Michelle looked radiant in her designer gown, and our parents beamed with pride. As I sipped champagne, I couldn't help but wonder if they had ever looked at me with such pride. Had they ever been this happy about anything I'd achieved? Driving my modest car back to my apartment that night, I questioned whether I'd made the wrong choices. Was Michelle right? Had I chosen the harder path for nothing? But then I thought about my job, my achievements, and the pride I felt knowing I had earned everything on my own. No, I decided, my path might be harder, but it was mine. That made all the difference. Life settled into a routine after Michelle's wedding. My work kept me busy, but my mother's calls became a regular and unwelcome interruption. "Barbara, darling," Mom would start, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You won't believe what Michelle's been up to." I'd brace myself as she launched into yet another story about Michelle's fabulous life. One day, after an especially exhausting call, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Mom, that's great for Michelle," I said, frustration creeping into my voice. "But don't you want to know what's going on in my life?" There was a pause. Then Mom said in a patronizing tone, "Oh, honey, of course we care, but you really should learn from your sister. Be more glamorous. Why work so hard for so little when you could have it all?" A few weeks later, I received an invitation to Michelle and Nicholas's housewarming party for their new luxury apartment, a gift from his parents. Naturally. That night, standing outside their building, I felt small. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed my simple dress and walked in. The apartment was breathtaking. Every surface sparkled, and every piece of furniture looked like it cost more than my yearly salary. My parents marveled at every detail. I tried to stay in the background, but Michelle spotted me immediately. She approached with a champagne flute in hand, her eyes scanning me critically. "Barbara, so glad you could make it," she said sweetly, though her tone was anything but. "I hope you're taking notes. This is how a housewarming should be done, none of that plastic furniture and disposable dishes nonsense like at your place." My cheeks burned. "Michelle, that's..." But she didn't wait to hear the rest, already flitting off to dazzle other guests. Weeks turned into months, and Michelle continued to flaunt her lavish lifestyle. Then one ordinary Saturday, everything changed. Mom called, her voice shaky. "Barbara, it's Michelle. She's back home." Nicholas left her. He said she's too shallow, too focused on spending his money. He even called her stupid. Can you believe it? And she signed a prenup. She has nothing. A wave of emotions hit me: shock, concern, and, if I was honest, a flicker of vindication. I quickly pushed aside the flicker of vindication. Ashamed of myself. "She's my sister. She needs help." Grabbing my keys, I said, "I'm coming over." When I arrived at my parents' house, the scene inside felt like stepping into a war zone. Michelle's piercing screams echoed from the driveway. Inside, chaos reigned. She was in the living room, mascara streaking her tear-stained face, her designer clothes crumpled and unkempt. She was throwing whatever she could get her hands on: vases, picture frames, cushions. "He can't do this to me," she shrieked, her voice raw with despair and rage. "I'm Michelle. I'm beautiful. I'm perfect." Mom and Dad hovered nearby, frantic and helpless. "Sweetie, please," Mom pleaded, her voice soothing but strained. "We'll figure this out. Dad will buy you a new dress, won't you, dear?" Dad nodded eagerly. "Of course, princess. Anything you want." I stood silently, observing this surreal display, feeling like I had stepped into an alternate reality. This isn't how life is supposed to work, is it? Days turned into weeks, and Michelle's tantrums became the new norm. She would cry for hours, scream until she was hoarse, and demand extravagant gifts to ease her pain. My parents, eager to placate her, indulged her every whim. One evening, after yet another meltdown, I ventured a suggestion. Maybe Michelle should consider getting a job. It might give her something to focus on and help her understand the value of money. The room fell silent. Then Michelle's face twisted in anger. "A job? Like you? Slaving away every day like some peasant?" She spat, her voice venomous. She burst into tears and stormed upstairs, slamming her door so hard the house seemed to shake. Before I could process what had just happened, my parents turned on me. "How dare you?" Mom hissed, her face pale with fury. "Your sister is going through a terrible time, and you suggest she lower herself?" "I didn't mean it like that," I tried to explain, but they weren't listening. "Get out," Dad said coldly, his voice cutting through me like a knife. "Get out of this house right now." Mom pointed at the door. "Out, and don't come back until you can be supportive of your sister." Numb, I grabbed my purse and walked out. Back in the safety of my apartment, a wave of emotion overwhelmed me: sadness for being cast out, anger at my parents' blindness, and, unexpectedly, a sense of relief. For the first time, I truly saw how toxic my family's dynamics had been. Life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Just days after the blow-up, I received incredible news. I had won a company contest. The prize was a 5-month, all expenses paid cruise around the world. In a rare moment of optimism, I called my parents, hoping to share the good news. Mom, Dad, you won't believe it. I want to cruise around the world. Silence greeted me on the other end, then my mother's cold voice shattered the quiet. Barbara, how can you be so selfish? Your sister is going through a terrible time, and you're bragging about vacations? I'm not bragging, I said softly, my heart sinking. I just thought. Enough, Mom cut me off sharply. If you had any decency, you'd give that ticket to Michelle. She needs it more than you. You can stay home and work, like you always do. Something inside me broke. Years of frustration boiled over. No, I said firmly, surprising even myself. I won this trip. I earned it. I'm not giving it up because Michelle made bad choices. I'm going. The next few weeks flew by as I prepared for the trip. On the day of departure, I did something I'd never done before. I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I felt free. The cruise was everything I had dreamed of. I watched breathtaking sunsets in Malta, explored ancient ruins in Romania, and wandered the bustling streets of Singapore. For 4 incredible months, I was just Barbara, not the responsible older sister, not the family disappointment, just me. But all good things must end. When I returned, reality hit. I turned on my phone, expecting a barrage of messages, but there were only a few missed calls from my parents. As I approached my apartment, I heard noises inside. Panic set in. Had someone broken in? I opened the door cautiously, and there she was, Michelle, sprawled on my couch, surrounded by shopping bags and empty takeout containers. Michelle? I exclaimed, what are you doing here? She barely glanced at me. Oh, you're back, finally. How did you get in? I demanded, anger bubbling up. She rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. I used the spare keys Mom and Dad had. I needed a change of scenery. Everything at home reminded me of, you know. I stared at her, stunned. This was too much. I'm going to the store, I muttered, needing to clear my head. When I reached the parking lot, my car was gone. Panic turned to fury as I called my parents. Mom, Dad, where's my car? There was a pause before Mom spoke, her voice unnaturally cheerful. Oh, Barbara, your sister needed cheering up, so we sold it. We used the money to take her shopping and to the spa. Isn't that thoughtful? I felt the world spin. You what? It's just a car, Dad said dismissively. What's ours is yours. Don't be selfish. Selfish, that word snapped something inside me. You stole my car, invaded my home, and I'm selfish? I yelled. I want my money back, now. Their response was instant and cruel. They called me heartless, ungrateful, a disappointment, but for the first time, their words didn't hurt me. The next day, I hired a lawyer. It was a long, exhausting battle, but in the end, I won. My parents were forced to sell their house to repay me. Furious, they told anyone who would listen that I was the villain, but for once, their opinions couldn't touch me. As I drove home in my new car, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had cut ties with my toxic family and, for the first time, was truly free. The path I had chosen wasn't easy, but it was mine, and that made all the difference.